Well, it's my time to be up here, so thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure really to be here. And I'm going to take you on a journey today. I'm going to try to share 3 stories with you. And we'll see where that takes us, because my title was a life behind the badge, but also connections, and how that is so relevant. And so I just want to talk about a Psalm of David. It says, "Blessed be the Lord, my strength, which teacheth me, which teacheth my hands to war, and my fingers to fight, my goodness and my fortress, my high tower, and my deliverer, my shield, and in whom I trust." And that might relate back a little bit to my first story. So at any rate, I have a question for you. Test question. What is the longest word in the English language?
I know what it is, but I can't say it.
That's okay. I think it's smiles, because it has S at the beginning and S with a mile in between. So there's your longest word. You've got an S at the beginning, S at the end, with a mile in between. But anyways, the good news is this, and I have bad news. The good news is I was given 10 minutes to speak today. Then the bad news is I've been given 10 minutes to speak. But I have about 20 minutes to share thoughts with you. So if you'll just play along with me with my journey. Do any of you have family members that were in law enforcement? Okay. Do you know someone in law enforcement? Okay. Involved with law enforcement. We'll keep that question down, okay? You're so truthful. That's a good thing. Well, here it is. And let me just share my thoughts on this. For me and my background in law enforcement as a police officer for 36 years, and I feel this way about it. I shared my thoughts with you. Law enforcement is a noble profession, worthy of the highest respect, a respect that was once universally given. Unfortunately, over the years, activists in our society have worked to degrade the respect that we are due. Recent events indicate that we are having some success, but as we see a percentage of public viewing officers with suspicion and disdain. Please understand that law enforcement officers are not above the law. However, there have been incidents where law enforcement officers' performance or authority has been under scrutiny, and rightly so. We are public servants. We're not public enemies. We live and work and raise families in the same communities, and we have vested interest in keeping them safe. Our jobs are increasingly dangerous. Ambush attacks on law enforcement have grown over the last 8 years, and a recent study of the FBI concluded that in many of the cases, they were motivated by a desire to hurt or kill a police officer. So let's go back in just a little bit in time. I was born in 1950. I'm not going to ask you when you were born, okay? But we watched in the 50s and 60s and 70s. We watched all variety shows of channels 3, 5, and 8. I think those are the 3 stations we had back then. And now into the 80s and 90s, 2000, 2010. Until now, media has exploded in so many different forms of social entertainment, communication, and information. I won't go through all this list, so let's think back. There was news, weather, and sports, westerns, variety shows, special cartoons. We actually watched cartoons, and of course soap operas. And of course police/cop shows. So you can nod your head if you remember some of these. Ben Gazzara, Burkstall, Gene Barry, the FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., the Felony Squad, Hawk with Burt Reynolds, NYPD with Jack Warden, Dragnet with Harry Morgan, Mannix with Mike Connors, Mod Squad, Adam 12, The Rookies, Starsky and Hutch, SWAT, Cagney and Lacey, Barnaby Jones, Remington Steele, Kojak, Hill Street Blues. I can go on, and I'll finish up with Walker, Texas Ranger. And now we have NCIS, Criminal Minds, and Northwoods Law, and that carries a lot of New England and even down into Texas, I guess now. And I have a couple favorites of mine. I love to watch Miss Marple, Murder, that one, Inspector Morse, and especially Endeavor, what he incorporates or involved with. And I used to watch Cops, but I don't watch Cops anymore for whatever reason. It's just I think that was just a little bit too glorified, but it was really showed you what we were encountering out there. And of course, there's shows from not only us into Canada. So, what those early TV shows really did not capture the depth of what law enforcement officers encounter on a daily basis. The many different situations we're confronted with and actions demanded. Because when you think about those shows, crimes were solved in 1 hour. The evidence was collected and processed in 1 hour. The suspect was identified and questioned and arrested in an hour. All jury was selected in minutes, okay? A trial was commenced, witnesses called, testimony taken, verdict and sentencing completed all in 1 hour. There's always the cliffhanger episode that wants us to come back. So I don't know, maybe we were superheroes at one time because we did rescue ducklings from a drain sewer. We recovered a stolen bike for a child in your neighborhood, or we performed CPR or saved a life, or we did something good for somebody in our community. In 1970, I had my first law enforcement job in Brunswick, Maine, and as a police officer there, my field training consisted of about 3 weeks. I had a week of nights, a week of days, a week of afternoons. Read the law books, and I got a map of the city or the town of Brunswick, and about the size of Jackson Township. And I had a great training officer, John Murphy, Corporal Murphy, and I was given a 38 Special, Model 10, a pair of handcuffs, portable radio, a nightstick that my brother carved for me because he also was at the police department too. And of course, you can't forget your ever-ready 3-cell battery or flashlight, okay, that I had there. And you had your pen and notebook, citation holder, and map of the town, and of course your city and state code book. But I didn't get to the academy right away. I had to wait for about a year to get a slot to go to the academy. But boy, today's officers, you can see what they're equipped with now. And you could probably see it just on the newsreels and things like that. Oh my gosh. A 9mm or 45 caliber handgun, extra magazines on them, double handcuff case. I just used to carry one. Tear gas canister, expandable batons, handheld radios. Now they're all microphone, there's their ear, flashlights of high intensity light, body cameras, tactical knives, hidden backup pistol. Some we still carry those. Ballistics, tasers, gloves, all kinds of things. And who knows what we might have in our trunk. And I won't go into those details, but we have so much more in there, especially our duty bags, our camera equipment, tactical first aid kits now that we carry with our person. Not only to take care of the officer if it's injured, but to take care of someone who has been injured, not as a result of us, but because of somebody else, so that we can try to save their life. And we're expected to know and to use all these things in a proper way. And when it came to emergency driving, I just learned it on my own, folks. We didn't have that training. They do nowadays. And thank goodness I had a good Boy Scout background because I knew how to do first aid. We call it artificial respiration back then, but we call it CPR now, okay? So those things, and now we have automated external defibrillators in our cruisers and things like that. And of course now you have computers that we can do a license check or find out something about that person in an instant, where I would call in a license and it might take 5 minutes for it to get back to me because we're looking for it in the dispatch on microfiche film and things like that. So at any rate, and all the laws that we had to learn about search and seizure and know and understand those laws are even more demanding now than ever before. Are fairly, impartially, okay, and with respect. And that is still something that I think you'll see in our officers today. Who would have thought about DNA evidence back in 1979 or 80? But that is so critical right now today. And I can say from my past experience, we had a conviction on somebody because of an incident where we recovered a contact lens out of a case. And we were able to get the DNA of the contact lens and trace that to the person, the suspect who we thought committed a crime. And that person is in jail for about 40 years. It's just little things like that, those little things to detail. So, more than any other profession, law enforcement requires more re-education and training on a daily basis. And as police chief, I instituted training tasks on a daily mission, for our officers. And of course, crisis intervention training. My goal was to have every officer trained in crisis intervention training. I learned a lot on my own on the street, but we don't need someone who's only been on for a month or two not to have that training, because who knows what kind of crisis they'll be thrown into. And we want them to have those skills, so we made sure that everybody in North Canton Police Department were CIT, as we call them, trained. And we're called upon to be a number of things. A pharmacologist, a psychologist, a teacher, counselor, an EMT, sometimes an attorney, but it's only advice, okay? We're not telling you what to do. Crisis negotiation, field training officer, and a pallbearer, and delivering death notifications. But most importantly, be a good listening ear and try to help people as best as we can. It's always been a tough job, and I don't see it getting any easier for our young people that are in law enforcement, and even for our veterans too. It was a tough way to make a living back in 1979. My pay was $185 a week, $9,600 a year. And why? I don't know, but that's all the town was willing to pay. But the bottom line is, and many of us here who have been in service, we took an oath. We took an oath to defend the Constitution and the rights and protect all persons and property. And regardless of who that person was or that incident, police officers represent our government. And just imagine doing a job where, unfortunately, people want to resist and fight you. And they spit at you, and they trash talk you, and they bite you, and they hit you, and they anger more often than not sometimes, or just plain out trying to kill you. Then think about what this job really description is. It's putting the life for you, dealing with the mentally ill, mitigating domestic violences, counseling a victim of child molestation for the family, again, delivering a death notification, counseling the bereaved after you do that, and pulling people out of burning vehicles and houses, and having to race somebody or chase somebody down a dark alley, not knowing what they might have around that corner, or just talking someone down from taking their own life or others. What kind of person does this? What kind of person takes that kind of job? What kind of person does all these things they do? For me, I think it's a person who does this for a society of strangers that they never know or may never meet again. We're always there, we're always committed, and we're always ready. For me, I don't think it was a job, it was a calling. And maybe you'll never know what makes a person want to do this, but for many of us, it is a calling. So I say, just give thanks that they are there for us. John 15:13, know this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. All too often, over the last years, that has happened. Well, that's a short story there. And I'm going to lead back into a little bit behind the badge, but also where it took me to another path in life for me. Because as I retired from being chief of police, I took an opportunity and a challenge to serve our community further as mayor. And I'd like you to step back in time with me after my first 90 days in office. I just want to share this short story with you, if you'll indulge me. So this is way back in, I think, 2020. Said, folks, on December 1st, 2019, I accepted the responsibility to serve the city to serve in the office of the mayor of the city of North Canton. It's hard for me to believe 90 days had passed and elapsed. As I circulate in our community and county and various destinations in our state, as a new mayor, almost every person I engage with asks me, so what's it like being mayor? Exciting and honored to be in this undertaking. Is it all what I expected? At that time, fairly well. I was going into COVID, if you remember, we had 20 days into office. I knew before I was in office I needed to be prepared as best as one could be for the challenge and opportunity that affect our community now and for our future. As mayor, I have had the good fortune to meet so many of our citizens, small and large business owners and leaders, civic organizations, our educational communities, state, local, and federal officials, and of course, visiting our faith-based community. And understanding what our community needs are and how and why. Working together is so crucial so we can be as impactful as possible. So filling the role as mayor has allowed me to continue to what I endeavored throughout my career in law enforcement, community service for family, to develop and maintain relationships that matter. If we have good relationships, we develop loyalty, trust, commitment, and respect. And then we can understand what the challenges are and to help solve problems. I believe building good relationships allows us to attract new families and businesses, encourages public and private partnerships, and helps our community move forward in an ever-changing world. In Colin Pound's book, It Worked for Me, in Life and Leadership, he referenced a saying from Admiral Hyman Rickover, the father of the nuclear navy, during a promotional ritual. Words, organizations don't get things done. Plans and programs don't get things done. Only people get things done. Organizations and plans and programs either help or hinder people. Colin Powell wrote, "A life is about its events. It's about challenges met and overcome, or not. It's about how we touch and are touched by the people we meet. It's all about the people. Relationships matter." When I think about us going to church and sharing in the groups that we work with and things, it really comes down, the message from Jesus, I think, is the relationships that we have. He always spoke about the people. And that's something that I kind of, for me, that's what I kind of put together. So I'm getting close to the end. But I'd like to share something because I know the theme in Faith United Methodist Church has been the deeply formed life. And for me, I think relationships is very part of that, of that life. And what I did in law enforcement was this, that carried me on to where I am at today. As a young police officer, I went to every EMS call, bloody nose, shortness of breath, because I wanted to accomplish several things. One, it helped me learn my streets. It helped me learn that address. I learned who lives there. I learned that this little boy has Tourette's syndrome, or this person over here is diabetic. And you know, when the police that comes in through that door, it's like the cavalry. I've seen it, the relief in people's families that, oh my gosh, someone's here to help us, because that's what we're here to do. We're helped to serve. And so over my time, that allowed me to develop relationships. Even on domestics, where I had to arrest a mother or a father or a son or a daughter. You know, as long as you did that respectfully and according to law, they may not like you at that time, but you never know, 4 or 5 months later, when you're sitting and having a chili in Wendy's, someone might come up and say, you know what, thank you for the way you handled that call. That meant so much for our family and our children. So that was my start of making relationships throughout the city, and that just went on and on and on. So I think it helped me when I chose to become mayor, and that establishing relationships, you develop some trust, I guess, or a lot of trust. But you know, and they get to know you, and they trust you, and they know that you're going to try to do your decisions for the greater good of the community. So in closing, let's do this. I went to I've seen this person talk several times. His name's John O'Leary. And as a little boy, he was influenced by some of his friends. And they were gasoline, and they thought it'd be cool to set something on fire in his garage. Well, unfortunately, before they could even light it, the fumes ignited. And this is a story about a 9-year-old boy who was burned over 100% of his body. But it's going to lead me into something that we just celebrated not too long ago. Christ being buried on the cross. And for what reasons? And what did he give back to us? And I think maybe we can connect that relationship to this story. and what I've been trying to share with you this morning. How important it is for good relationships. So, his story reads like this. What would you do if you knew today was your last day? As a 9-year-old, this wasn't just a hypothetical question to consider, but a reality I faced every day. This is John O'Leary speaking now. After being burned over 100% of my body in a gasoline explosion, I was given less than 1% chance to survive the first night. Although I survived that first night and the 5 months in the hospital that followed, the specter of death remained ever present during that time. Never was it more real, though, than the nights before surgeries. A severely burned patient's skin will never grow back on its own, so doctors are charged with taking skin from one part of the body, called a donor site, and covering the rest with lace. This was extremely difficult, dangerous, and time-consuming because the only part of my body suitable was my scalp. This meant that more than a dozen times skin was taken from my scalp and transplanted to cover, piece by piece, the rest of my body. Because of my weakened condition, the additional stress of surgery and blood loss presented the very real prospect that next surgery could be my last. With this in mind, my parents would make the evening before the surgeries extremely special. They'd bring me a gift, my siblings would visit, we'd eat pizza, down milkshakes, and stay up late. We do our very best to ignore the painful reality before us. The focus was on me. That's how I spent my nights when I thought that I might be my last. How would you respond? Or how would you want to spend yours? What, would you have a party for hundreds? Toasts offered, music playing, slideshow running? Would you have an intimate gathering of family? Enjoy a favorite meal with loved ones and share the remarkable, funny, and sacred stories that our family knows and that only your family gets? Or would you be even more reflective? Maybe a long walk in nature, praying, reflecting, first waiting in anticipation, fear, faith, with hope. My friends, it's unlikely we'll never know the exact date of our death. We can imagine where we might go, what we might do, how we might feel, and what we might say. But for us, it's just a guess, simply imagination. Now, this was just before Easter. But last Thursday, I was reminded how Jesus closed to spend his last night when he knew it was the end. He knew he'd been betrayed. He knew perfectly the unimaginable rejection, loneliness, struggle, and suffering certain to come. Knowing that the end was near, that the very reason for his birth was about to be perfectly achieved. He brought together his closest friends. He sat with them. He prayed with them. He broke bread with them. He shared drink with them. He talked with them. In other words, he did the normal stuff of life with them. And then the unexpected happened. He got up from the table. He took a bowl of water, wrapped a towel around his waist, and bent down before them. One by one, their rabbi, their teacher, washed their feet. His focus until the end was always on others, always on serving, revealing love and. My friends, as a child, I enjoyed big parties before every surgery. It was all about me. Yet Jesus uses one of the final moments of his life not to mask anxiety or receive gifts, but to harness the significance of the moment by reminding his friends one more time what real victory, true celebration, and an abundant life looks like. His example was less about to spend the last day of our lives. His example was less about how to spend the last day of our lives, and much more a spectacular reminder of how we are called to live each day and every day, leading up to it. He talks about having an abundant life, and we talk about the deeply formed life. I think these go hand in hand. But I think what happens is this, and for the way I interpret it, there's no way I'm comparing myself to Jesus, folks. You know that. But from what I've learned throughout my life, his life was of service. His service and devotion to others. To have a better world. to have faith and hope in what we do and what we work for. And I think that's what happens when we go into law enforcement. Because for me, it was a calling of service. I learned it early on from my mother and my father. I was very fortunate. A bit of a Presbyterian church. But when my dad came back from the war, he picked up life right where he left it. Became a Mason, looking for a greater light. Taught Sunday school. Mom taught Sunday school. I went to Vacation Bible School. Great times growing up as a kid. Jesus Loves Me, like, it is my favorite song that Mom would sing to me at night. But I watched them, how they gave back to their community time and time again through their schools, through their church. And that service just, I think, was instilled with me. And I couldn't have picked a better profession to go into for a life of, I guess, for my calling. Because I really think it is. Anyone that goes into the clergy or a public service, it is a calling. And we are there, I believe, for the greater good. You know, on my brother's tombstone, we have Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And to me, that still reigns, so much with me when I think about that. God's mission and Jesus' mission of service to help other people. And so that's where I kind of came up with this idea about the connectedness, the importance of relationships. Because think about his relationship that he had the night before his death. Think about our relationships. And there are times where I think about my relationship with Jesus, and it's been tested. And am I doing everything that I can be doing that would help our community and myself be a better person and have a better community? There's so in conclusion, all right, those are my thoughts today, and I can't thank you enough for the privilege to be up here and just share a few thoughts. I hope my journey on those 3 stories there's a connection for you there, and that it does give us some hope and desire to go out. We continue to serve in the mission of what Jesus and our Holy Bible professes. So, with that being said, I think our next point is our hymn of mission, Shine, Jesus, Shine.